We are on the home stretch to SummerSlam, as tonight's WWE Raw was the go-home show. SummerSlam coming up this Saturday and Sunday, and WWE tried to finish off their building of their final angles here and their matches for this weekend SummerSlam, and I thought tonight's show was pretty decent. Excellent post-match destruction of Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, complete with Bronson Reed stealing Roman Reigns' sneakers like they're on the damn playground at school. CM Punk had a really, really strong message to send to Gunther, which I liked as well. And of course, WWE paid yet another tribute to Hulk Hogan, another 10-bell salute. They had some extra people there this time. His son Nick was there with his wife, and Eric Bischoff was also there as well, along with a few others. So we got another 10-bell salute and another really, really touching video package tribute to Hulk that was different than the one they did on SmackDown on Friday. And overall, I thought tonight's show was decent, but I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, how you would rank it, grade it, whatever, A, B, C, or D, 1 through 10. And how are you feeling about this weekend SummerSlam? I still think the card has a lot of potential. Based on what we saw tonight, I'm starting to formulate my ideas of what I think might go down here, as we'll talk about some of that. But all of my official predictions will be reserved for this coming Thursday when we have a live stream planned. So let me know what you guys thought. Just give me your opinions and whatnot in the chat, and I'll try to read as many of them as I can. Of course, I'll read all the super chats here tonight. And really all we're going to do is talk about Monday Night Raw. I got a couple other things to mention about our schedule this week. We're going to no wrestling news to get into tonight because I didn't really look up any of that. So it's pretty much just a Raw review, and we're going to kind of preview SummerSlam and run through some ideas that we might have for that and some of the matches and the outcomes and whatnot. Other than that, we'll talk a lot about Hulk Hogan again, I'm sure, and hear what you guys have to say, and it should be a fun little review tonight. So happy Monday to you, and thank you so much for being here. It's been a long, weird week. We've been up here a lot in the last few days. You guys have seen me the last 4 out of 5 days or something like that. We were up here just an hour and a half after Hogan passed away. Then we dedicated pretty much the entire podcast to him on Saturday and spent over half the time talking about Hulk Hogan. And then, of course, we were here last night, too, doing a SummerSlam 1995 watch-along, which was kind of a trip. And here we are now to review the go-home Raw for this weekend's SummerSlam. And I'm going to be here all weekend with you guys as well, watching SummerSlam, reviewing SummerSlam, and like I said, we'll be up here on Thursday for predictions, and I'll give you guys some more info on that in just a minute. But thank you so much, everyone who is here already in the chat. I know Mondays are busy because every single wrestling YouTuber is live, so this night usually has my audience about as low as it gets here. So if you guys could hook me up with a like and whatnot, I would really appreciate it, and thank you for those of you who are here. Going to do some hellos and shout-outs, and then I'll let you guys know a couple of things, and we will start reviewing Raw and previewing SummerSlam. Good to see Zane G in the house, as always. Melissa is here, Crazy J, Nick Musser, Ajax Johnson, Denny Down Bad, Ronnie Matthews, somebody called it Detroit Police, the Detroit punk-ass police, Sneakers Taken, Ricky Zalvadar, Ken Webb, good to see you, David Brown, Mohammed is here, Rodrigo, and my boy Chris Ludek, thanks for the 5. I think it was a solid B show tonight. How likely do you think a swerve of a Seth cash-in is if CM Punk beats Gunther? I was thinking a lot about that, and I feel like the way to capitalize on the swerve the best isn't to do it in Punk and Gunther. It's to do it at Cena and Cody. And I know Rollins has already got the thing tied in with Punk and whatnot, but he already cost him a championship match against Cena, right? Seth had something to do with that. Didn't he stomp Punk and he lost to Cena or whatnot? So it feels like Punk is the one that is up for revenge here. So if he wins the championship and then Seth steals it from him, I guess maybe the ultimate revenge would be Punk beating him for it, perhaps. But Seth could also come in and make it a triple threat and whatever. Either way, that means Rollins would wind up screwing Punk out of the WWE title and the World Heavyweight title, which would just add to their feud. It would probably, if they have a big blow-off match and Seth turns out not to be hurt, he wins the championship, and then Punk wins it back near the end of the year, or maybe, at the Royal Rumble or whatnot. It's going to be feud of the year, those two. So I don't know, but I feel like the bigger swerve would be to have Gunther and Punk just have their match, and then the fans are like, well, I guess Seth is really injured because he would come out here and cash in, and then he shows up on night 2 in the main event and cashes in on Cody. And I would love that. I would prefer that. I don't need to see Rollins carry that belt again. He was the first one to hold it, and he held it for a lot of months. I don't need that. I'd like Rollins to go after the other one. But I feel like that would be the best way to really accomplish a swerve. But I don't know. I still think your scenario is probably the most likely because, Punk and Gunther both have kind of called out Seth before he was even injured about that Money in the Bank briefcase. So maybe that's just all a red herring and he's going to show up in Cody and Cena. Or maybe Seth is legitimately hurt and he ain't coming back at all. Tonight in the main event, Michael Cole did reference the fact that Rollins, has until next June to cash in the briefcase. And he said something like, so no worries there. So basically, I can't tell if he's trying to throw the fans off the scent, keep them thinking that Punk is on the shelf, or if he's reminding the fans he has got until next year to cash in the briefcase. Even though he's hurt, stop worrying about where the briefcase is going to go. It's going to stay with him. So I couldn't tell what he meant by that. So, I still think it's maybe possible that he shows up in a big swerve and whatnot, but I don't know. We'll talk more about a potential Seth Rollins cash in definitely on Thursday because I have got to organize my predictions because I'm not really sure about a lot of these matches quite yet, and especially with the cash-in stuff and the 2 championship matches, Punk and Cody both going after the titles. What if Punk won the title? What if Punk won the title against Gunther and there's no cash-in? And then on night 2, Seth Rollins comes in and cashes in and wins the heavyweight championship from either Cody or from Cena or whatever happens there. And then you've got champion CM Punk versus champion Seth Rollins. And maybe you do a champion versus champion War Games team at Survivor Series. Team Rollins, Team Punk. Something like that. I don't know. It could go a lot of different ways, but I'm still kind of leaning towards that Seth is legitimately injured and we're not going to see him at all at SummerSlam. But I'll give it more thought, and we'll unpack a lot of it this coming Thursday. Speaking of this coming Thursday, I spent some time today. It was homework day for the channel, and I put up all of our links for SummerSlam. First one is going to be on Thursday. We are going to be going, actually, all 3 of these live streams are going to be going live at the same time. 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. On Thursday, we're going to be doing SummerSlam predictions. We will go live and we will predict both nights of SummerSlam, and you're going to get all that on Thursday, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. Same goes for night 1 of SummerSlam. Watch along and review. We will be live when the main card starts, and that's also going to be 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. And then on night 2, we will be doing the same thing. Watch along and review, so you're going to get my bald ass for a whole lot of hours coming up this weekend for SummerSlam. I'm really, really looking forward to it, to be honest. So all the links are up right now. They are on the channel. Go over there and save them all for the weekend because you're going to be seeing a lot of me, and I'm looking forward to it. Let's see what else I can tell you about. And before we get into the Raw review tonight, I got my Survivor Series tickets last night. Few of us are going. Elizabeth and I are going to go. Zach from who's in the chat sometimes. Chris is going to be joining us. And Chris, you're bringing a friend, I think. So we got a little chunk of 5 seats there for SummerSlam. We're going to be over on the same side as the Western Metal Supply building. Decent seats. Not great like ringside or nothing, but we're up on the the first little level there. And seats are booked for Petco. So if you are going to make it to Survivor Series, please hit me up in the next few months. We're going to be organizing a little fan meetup, probably before and after the show, because here on the West Coast, the show is going to end at like 8 o'clock. So there's plenty of nighttime left. So we can always walk out of Petco Park, go right over to a little fine establishment somewhere and hang out some more if anybody is interested in doing that in November on Thanksgiving weekend. Let us know in the next few months, and we will boogie together. Oh, yeah, here's something fun. Last night, Elizabeth and I decided that we would watch Happy Gilmore 2. Anybody seen it? Anybody seen it yet? I felt obligated to see it for Bex and for Max alone, but I went into it with extremely low expectations because, you think of something like Dumb and Dumber, the sequel that happened 20 years later. This is almost a 30-year sequel coming so much later, and usually these type of things come off like cash grabby and incredibly phoned in and just not the same and terrible and awful. And I'm not a big fan of sequels, especially ones like this. But every now and then, like, holy shit, like they did the new Bill and Ted, right? Recently, and that wasn't that bad. And, there's a lot about Adam Sandler I like. There's some of his movies that I think are really, really good. But then there's also that Sandler humor that I just don't like. That Little Nicky, Don't Mess with the Zohan, or the Jack and Jill, or the Chuck and Larry, or those type of movies I fucking can't stand. Can't stand them. The humor is stupid. They're not funny to me. And they're just like overly stupid, too stupid. But then you've got some of the movies like Big Daddy and like 50 First Dates that are Adam Sandler stupid, but have enough heart to them that it balances it out, Happy Gilmore was one, maybe I liked Happy Gilmore a little bit more than Billy Madison. But Billy Madison, again, it's just like, it's just a little too stupid for me. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? With Sandler, he's got that type of humor that some people love it, some people hate it, but he also has a wide range of acting abilities. He's been in some good movies, Punch Drunk Love, and some serious, more dramatic roles. And so he can do everything. But when it comes to these Sandler, these Happy Madison productions with all the old people from Grandma's Boy and all the movies, you see all the same people. Rob Schneider's always got to make an appearance, Steve Buscemi, the cross-eyed roommate from Grandma's Boy who spends all the money on the hookers or whatever. You see all of those people in all of his movies. And so, of course, they were all back. And it was 2 hours long. And I got to say, it was tolerable. It was not as stupid as I thought it was going to be. The reviews and the feedback so far isn't like great on the movie, but I was going into it thinking I was going to watch the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen. And don't get me wrong, it was Sandler dumb, but it was tolerable. I kind of enjoyed it. There's a couple times I chuckled. It was fun to see MJF there and Becky, who I think Becky did a great job. So did MJF. I loved the cameos. Like literally everybody was in this movie. Everybody from, Post Malone to Jesus Christ, Nick Swardson and all these guys, like everybody is in the movie. And I enjoyed that. It surprised me a little bit. It was basically Shooter McGavin turning babyface, but it was also very dodgeball-y. Shooter and Happy were going up against Globo Gym. That's all that was. It was Globo Gym. So I'm not going to spoil the rest of the movie for you, but that's basically the plot there. It's going to be Shooter and Happy versus Globo Gym. And it was fun, and it was not a regrettable experience. So if you want to check out Happy Gilmore 2, and you haven't yet, give it a look. I think 2 hours is a little bit too long. I think a movie like that should be 1 hour and 30, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. And anyway, just want to give you like my little mini review there of Happy Gilmore 2. If any of you have seen it, let me know what you think of the movie in the chat there. I think that's all I really had to talk about in terms of non-WWE Raw stuff. But now we should get into WWE Raw because we are just 5 or 6 days away. 5 days away from SummerSlam, and it's going to be a big, big weekend. The crew is already in MetLife Stadium setting it up, and I guess they've got about 45-ish thousand seats for each night sold here. Let's pray for no rain. I mean, we're talking summertime up in New York. It could easily rain. It could definitely easily rain. So hopefully it will not, and the weather will cooperate. I'm sure by now there's got to be some sort of forecast. If anybody wants to check out the forecast for New Jersey on Saturday and Sunday, let us know in the chat what they're saying, if we're going to get thunderstorms or maybe a tornado will show up. There's no roof to tear off, so it might just suck the people right up into the tornado. Let's hope it doesn't. Let's hope the weather cooperates for SummerSlam. Tonight's Monday Night Raw was live from the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, Michigan. And I think that's really appropriate that Hulk Hogan's tribute, his 10-bell salute, kind of took place. I know they did one on Friday as well, but tonight's 10-bell salute took place in the city where he where he did have his biggest moment. That Andre the Giant body slam is the most iconic image in the history of not only wrestling, but sports. One of the most iconic images in sports, definitely the most iconic image in wrestling. And so it was kind of fitting almost, granted, Pontiac, Detroit, same thing. So they were in Detroit tonight. And, as a kid, I always, Hogan was in Detroit a lot. And I think that was kind of cool. TMZ reported earlier on in the day that Nick Hogan was actually going to be at Monday Night Raw tonight. So that told me that WWE must have another tribute planned, because I certainly don't think they're going to put him on camera like with a microphone or have him talk or anything like that. The fact that he's there told me that they're going to do a 10-bell salute, and he's going to be standing there in the front, because on Friday they had a lot of Hogan's friends. They flew in Duggan, they flew in Slaughter, poor Jimmy Hart, who you just feel for so much. And B. Brian Blair was there and a few others. And so tonight they had Nick Hogan and his porn star wife, apparently, and Eric Bischoff was there. He wasn't he was invited to SmackDown, apparently, but he wasn't able to make the trip. So he was able to be there for this one. And, it was nice. Just it's still hard to kind of wrap our heads around the Hulk Hogan death. And like we've talked about it over and over in the last few days, it's very complicated due to some of the fans' feelings towards him, my feelings towards him, what kind of forgiveness we're going to have in our hearts now that he's passed away, and how everybody chooses to individually process this. We did a lot of talking about that on Thursday, in our rambling just live stream when I was just coming up here and just reacting to the news. And then on Saturday when we were a little bit more organized with our thoughts and, memories of his career and whatnot, we've done a lot of talking about, how he's going to be remembered and how the fans are reacting to his death, from, the staunch defenders of him and the racist apologists to the people that want to shit on his grave and everywhere in between. And, I definitely put myself somewhere in between. I would never celebrate a death ever. But, I will never, I don't know if I will ever be able to get past him saying, I am a racist. It's hard to forget that. But, now that it's been a few days, I think tonight's Monday Night Raw, and WWE, they always do it to you, man. They can always get you with these video packages. And it was just something about Friday, I was still processing everything. So the 10-bell salute, I was at work for all of that. I came home, watched SmackDown later that night. And then we talked about it on Saturday. But today and tonight on Raw, I think it's the first time that it kind of hit me. It's the first time since he died that I'm starting to have regrets, gotta have them regrets, about, I kind of wish I maybe forgave him earlier. There's so much to not like about him, but as we've talked about in the last two big Hulk Hogan podcasts, you also have to measure, the bad with the bad of others and whatnot. And when you think about who he was and his personality, there was a lot of things that he didn't do that a lot of other older wrestlers do. And there's a bitterness about them. There's, they're overly critical and they're not supportive at all of the new generation. They have nothing but complaints. Bret Hart's my favorite wrestler of all time, but I didn't appreciate him telling me just a few days after I watched what I thought was a tremendous Hell in a Cell match between The Undertaker and Triple H at WrestleMania 28. And one of the most fun roller coaster rides I've ever experienced as a wrestling fan. And then my favorite wrestler's got to come out and say it was a 4 out of 10. It's like that type of stuff. I'm like, why is everybody so bitter and unsupportive? I don't understand that. And that is one thing I'll remember about Hogan, is that he didn't care enough to shit on anybody. Even when people talk shit about him, you would never hear him go on do an interview and spend 30 minutes defending himself to someone or having a whole bunch of shitty things to say about someone. He doesn't have that public enemy number one in his head, the way Cornette has Russo, the way Bret has Goldberg. Hogan doesn't have any of that, and so it's just like, you got to just judge it for yourself and decide, in your own heart, if you want to forgive. And I probably wouldn't give a shit about any of this if I was 20 years younger than I am. But, you're talking about someone who watched Hogan win the championship when I was 7. That was 40 years ago. And so there's so much of him. The toys and the action figures and how I idolized him for, 7 years of my life there before I discovered Bret Hart and moved on to bigger and better things. But for a while there, Hogan is, you remember so much about your childhood, and nostalgia is a hell of a drug. And, those years are so impressionable and they stick with you, and time goes by so slowly when you're young and so fast when you're older that, when I think about that Hogan has passed away, I am flooded with a lot of those quite frankly, positive memories from being a kid, watching him, what he meant. I am not sitting here right now talking into a camera about pro wrestling without him. I'm not even probably watching this shit without him. If I would have grown up without Hulk Hogan, when I was ages 6 through 11, I might watch a little wrestling, but I don't think I would have developed the love for it that I did, even though I was moved on from Hogan by the time I was 13. By the time I was 13, and we got it in like 1990 and 1991, I had moved on to other favorites. So it was only ages 7 to 13 at most. We're talking 6 years that Hogan was, kind of like my number one. But when you are a kid, that 6 years feels like 20 years in my head. And I remember everything that he did. I remember everything that he said, every promo, every match, all of that stuff. And so, having all those memories, now that we've had a few days to have the Hogan news soak into us, it really kind of makes you rethink, everything. Sure, he was an unsavory person. I cannot believe, he would openly admit he's a racist like that. And anyone who was offended by those comments, I'm not going to tell you how to forgive him, if you should forgive him, how you should react, anything like that. That's your business. I just, regardless of what you do or say, I don't know if I feel comfortable with people celebrating, a death like his. There can be some people you might want to, there's some real shitty people in this world. There's a certain world leader right now that I will definitely dance a fucking jig when he leaves this earth, but Hogan, we're talking about something shitty that he said. I got a newsflash for you guys. I've said shitty things. 25 years ago, I'm appalled by some of the things that came out of my mouth. Not necessarily racist things, but things that you're just immature, and I forgave myself. And I'm not saying I said anything worse than Hogan, but, we've all said things that we regret. And I think words are a little bit different than actions. And, Hogan never committed any hate crimes. He didn't attend any Klan rallies, although Trump rallies are about the same thing. But he never took his fans for granted. Somebody posted, I think it was Roy, posted a video that he shot of Hogan getting out of his truck, meeting a bunch of fans in a fucking parking lot. And it's like every time you see Hogan around fans, he doesn't seem bothered by them. Get the fuck away from me. I'm not going to sign that for you so you can just sell it on eBay. Buy a ticket to an autograph signing if you want to talk to me. Bothered by them, annoyed by them, turned off by them, taking them for granted. He's the opposite of that. And that's one positive thing I will definitely always remember about him, is that he never, at least on purpose, disappointed his fans. I know there was an autograph signing a while back where a bunch of fans left pissed because he left and he didn't get a chance to sign everyone's, but that's not something I really blame him for. That's just too many fucking people, and he's never going to do anything. He never seemed like someone who would do that to his fans purposely. And he was always the Hulkster for his fans, even if he was think about all the back surgeries and the pain his body was probably in, and he would still turn it on and show the pythons for the little kid dressed as him, whatever. And that's a level of commitment to your fans that, frankly, a lot of wrestlers and old timers don't have. Maybe Foley. Foley would be up there too, because Foley he always wants to be surrounded by people. He loves fans. He loves talking to people. A lot of wrestlers don't. They don't want to talk to people. They don't want to be bothered by them, and they kind of take their fans for granted. The fans that, make them the money that they make, sometimes you see that. You see that with current stars now. So, Hogan, we talked about that on Saturday. We ran through a lot of the good and the positive things that he did attribute and some of the things about him that weren't all bad. And I think tonight was just one of those things where, now that we're finally at the end of this, we're not going to have too many more podcasts that are going to be centered around Hulk Hogan. This is all still happening. We had our second 10-bell salute tonight on Monday Night Raw. They're probably going to do another one tomorrow night on NXT, but we don't do NXT reviews here, so this is probably going to be the last time we really talk about Hogan in long form. But, I think it's just time to forgive and put it behind you, And like I said, several times in the last couple of streams about Hogan, where all of my criticism of him came from was me being a disappointed fan. I was a let down fan because when we got to 2005 or whatever it was, and Hogan Knows Best started and the family started crumbling and he started making an ass out of himself in public. And I was like, you are supposed to be the face of this business. You are the Babe Ruth. You have a responsibility. I don't like what you are doing. You are embarrassing us. You know, I want to celebrate you, not be pissed at you. And I think a lot of that, like I felt like a betrayed child. I felt like one of my heroes betrayed me. And that's what they say. There's an old saying, don't meet your heroes. You know, I met Brett. He was great to me. But, you know, Hogan, you know, kind of showed his true colors there and showed that really at the end of the day, he's a very, very flawed individual. And I think I let that almost get the better of me. It reminds me a lot of Chyna. You know, for the last couple of years there, Chyna's life, I really let up on her because I was real hard on her because she was just always just a fucking drug-addicted fucking mess. But it kind of came to the realization a couple of years before she died that she is struggling, and she's really been through a lot. And instead of ridiculing her, I want to help her. And unfortunately, it was too late, and we kind of knew that it was going to end that way for her. And I remember like talking about her death and whatnot and just being saddened by it. It made me sad because I really liked Chyna. I thought she was so unique, so interesting, so important to the business at that time, just like Hogan was. And her behavior was starting to really piss me off. But she also was done wrong. She had, the thing with Triple H and Stephanie and the way she left WWE, that took a mental toll on her. And she kind of flew off the rails there. And I feel like if, there would have been a chance for her, much like Jake Roberts, much like Scott Hall, much like Kurt Angle, there would have been a chance for redemption for her, to even go into the Hall of Fame and stand side by side by Triple H. Put it all behind you, clean yourself up, get married, have your own life, forgive and forget. And, I was hoping we would get that for her. And Hogan, he was there right until the end, he wasn't, he didn't pass away during one of his hiatuses from WWE, which they did a couple of times, or at least they did in 2015 when that videotape was released. So, it's just, I think only fans in their 40s can truly maybe get where I'm coming from. I just don't think if you can quite understand this if you're 25 years old. You're not going to get it. But you'll get it later in life when somebody important to your childhood passes away. And when I think about Hogan, he's gone. He's passed away. There's no reason to hold any grudges against Hulk Hogan anymore, at least for me. So regardless of what you guys decide to do, regardless of what any fans decide to do, members of the black community, what do you guys decide to do? I feel like I can sleep better at night if I just forgive him and forget it and just move on. People say stupid shit. Really wish he wouldn't have said some of the things he said. Really wish he wouldn't have done some of the things he did. But nobody's perfect. Hogan certainly wasn't. But, I want to try my best to remember positive stuff because there's a ton of it. And that's what sucks about, people like Hogan and Flair who do this to themselves. Any of these wide variety of reactions, nobody can blame fans for this. This is their own doing here, Like all you had to do is not be a racist, and I don't think people would be fucking pissed, and be so critical of you. So I'm not, blaming the fans. Like, a good point to bring up here is that when people are on social media and policing and lecturing on folks on how they should react and how they do blah, 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 you can't do that. You can't tell anybody how to think or feel. I was like, but what is bothering me is that you see a lot of people that are madder about fans not forgiving him than they are about what he said in the first place. That's fucked up. That just tells me that you're an apologist. You're a racist apologist. You're perfectly fine, with somebody saying those type of things. Some people see racism as a quality. About 47% of this stupid country thinks that. Everything is race to them. So, Hogan would have just done things differently, he wouldn't have this type of controversy. But, everybody can process it their own way. I'm choosing to process it my way. And I think tonight was kind of a reminder of, what a big part of like my childhood was. We used to have the ice cream man coming through. I could hear him from 2 blocks away, run out there, and they would say there were 75 cents, I remember. Or maybe they were $1.25. I think it was 75 cents in 1987 for the WWE ice cream bars. He would pull up right to my house. And they only had honky-tonk mans. It pissed me off. You always wanted Hogan. I got no Hogans. I was like, please, I don't think I ever got a Hogan. I don't think I ever got a Hogan ice cream bar, but I got like fucking 10 honkies. So annoying. So, all those memories, just being a kid. The action figures. Matter of fact, WWE is re-releasing the old rubber LJN figures, like a commemorative remake or something. You can pre-order these on Target right now. I might just get one. The original one, now if you would have bought the one in 1986 in the box, I think that's worth like 20 grand. And I have a Hogan LJN original that I got in 1986. I got in a Hillbilly Jim tag team set. That's where I got my Hogan. And he came with the belt and everything. And so I never got my Hogan in an original package. But I still have it. But like having that, like if they do a Brett one, I might just have to get it. I'm not even an action figure guy, but it kind of like looked cool, the fact that it's retro and all that. So now that we're into day 4 of Hulk Hogan's passing, I think we've said about all we can say on it, and now it's just about moving on and seeing how his legacy is remembered from here on out. 10 years from now, 5 years from now, when we talk about Hulk Hogan, what's going to dominate the conversations, the good or the controversy? Because right now it's kind of a mixture of a lot of both, and will one fade away? Will some of the good filter out and people are just going to really, really focus on some of the mistakes he made, or is it going to be vice versa? Or is it going to be the same as it is now? I don't know. But the wrestling world lost its biggest star, the biggest star we've ever seen. And I said, The Rock, John Cena, obviously they are household names as well. There's more than one wrestler to become a household name, but Hogan really is the biggest because nobody had a run like his. He was the face of 2 boom periods. One as a heel, one as a babyface, 10 years apart, which is incredible. Austin, how long was Austin's run? 4 years, if that? Plus he was injured for a year of that. How long was The Rock's run? 5 years? Then he was off to make movies and came back once or twice for a match. Then he was gone for another 10 years. Like Hogan had like the longevity there. 2 companies. He saved 2 companies. WCW was in the shitter, man, when he came in. They were just the distant number 2, and he saved them. WWE, I don't know where they'd be today. He came in and just completely changed the game there in 1984 or 1983 when he returned to WWE, and the fact that he did so much for 2 different eras of wrestling, you got to credit him with so much. And sure, there's Steve Austins. Sure, there are John Cenas. Sure, there are The Rocks. All those stars are out there, and they are absolutely mega stars, household names. But Hogan is the OG. I still think to this day people know who he is. Even if you don't watch wrestling. Oh, hell yeah, I've seen Hogan on commercials and whatever. Or you've seen him in news stories and sex tapes and shit like that. So even today, everybody knows who the Hulkster is. And, in a way, now that he's passed away, I'm hoping that some of the uglier things about him can start to be forgotten. And we can just try to remember his wrestling career, because I think that's what's most important. I think that for all the mistakes he made and some of the shitty things he said, I still think his good outweighs his bad. He was good for wrestling. He was also bad for wrestling, but I think he was more good for it. Sure, he might have killed WCW or at least played a role in it because of the mentality there and stuff like that, but they wouldn't have been in that position to begin with had he not been there to begin with. So, the fact that he basically saved 2 companies from possible death has to be acknowledged, Rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. Rest in peace. Jey Uso opened up the show tonight with a little promo. He's coming out to the ring. He's going to be in the main event tonight against Big Bronson Reed. And, of course, him and Roman Reigns, cousin Roman, are going to be facing Reed and Breakker in a tag team match at SummerSlam. So Jey Uso is out there to open the show, and he, of course, does his big entrance. The fans want an encore, but before the music can start up again, Paul Heyman comes out to interrupt, comes out to the aisleway, and he basically tries to sow doubt in Jey Uso's mind about Roman Reigns. Reminds him how Roman abused him in the bloodline and all the things he did to him and that type of thing. Talked about how Roman lied to him the same way his mother lied to him about there being no Santa Claus. I mean, if there was little kids watching at home, like what if there's a 7-year-old that just heard Paul Heyman say there's no Santa? What year do you stop believing in Santa? 7 too old? No. 10 or something, 9 or 10, something like that. What if there's a little 7-year-old? Mom, is there no Santa? No, sorry, honey, no Santa. So Jay, though, says, hey, I'm a different man than I was back then. I'm world champion now. I'm not Roman's lackey. I'm Roman's equal. So your attempt to cause a rift between us is a failure. And we will talk more about that situation here because I got a lot of things to say about that SummerSlam match. Really fun mixed tag. First match of the night. AJ Styles teaming up with Kabukis. That right there is an adorable team. Adorable. AJ and the Kabukis. Give me more of that. They're taking on Dominic Mysterio and the women's tag team champions, Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez. We got a big I love AJ. There's a spot there where he launched Kyrie over the top rope and she went flying. I think she landed on top of Raquel. But we wound up getting a phenomenal forearm right to the face of Dominic Mysterio here for the win. So that's not a good omen for AJ Styles to win the Intercontinental Championship. The fact that he pinned Dominic tonight on Raw. I'm starting to think that Dominic is going to retain the Intercontinental Championship at SummerSlam because Dominic is going to be in that big Triple Mania 4-way, which I believe is August 16th. That's going to be him and Grande and Dragon Lee and Vikingo for the AAA championship or whatever. And that's going to be a Triple Mania. And I'm thinking WWE probably wants Dom as the Intercontinental Champion for that match. It's possible AJ could win the title from Dom and then Dom wins the title at Triple Mania. But I feel like they kind of just might want Dom as the IC champ at Triple Mania. They just might want the IC title and AAA ring. Did he bring it with him when he did the attack the other night? I think the date on that is the 16th, a couple weeks. So based on how that match ended, I feel like Dom is going to retain the Intercontinental title. As CM Punk said tonight, the SummerSlam. I kind of thought Punk might drop a little subtle tribute to Hulk Hogan in his promo. And instead, he dropped a subtle tribute to Bret Hart, which I love. After that was Sheamus taking on Grayson Waller. This was kind of set up backstage. Sheamus is talking about his match last week with Rusev. Grayson comes in and says something stupid, and Sheamus is like, all right, fuck it, let's have a match. So it's now time to have the match. Rusev shows up trying to interfere, and he fails. And then Grayson Waller, who, by the way, is in just incredible shape. He's a big, guy, but he was never like kind of just ripped the way he was. But I think all those months with Austin Theory, Austin Theory's got, he's pretty jacked, and maybe Waller was like, I should be like that too. So he's looking in great shape, but he lost, ate a bro kick, swallowed a bro kick from Sheamus for the win. Sheamus is victorious, and then he's immediately attacked from behind by Rusev, and Rusev lays out and destroys Sheamus. So Rusev and Sheamus, their issue is not over yet. I wish there was time to chuck a blow-off, or a tiebreaker or whatever on SummerSlam. Unless they did tonight and I zoned out and missed it. But, we're getting Cross and Sammy on SummerSlam. I'd rather have Sheamus and Rusev, to be honest. But Rusev and Sheamus, their issue not over yet. Naomi had a quick backstage interview. I didn't really listen to it. I went and did my laundry. So she's talking about her SummerSlam match or something. I didn't really listen. And then it was time for an in-ring promo from Lyra Valkyria, who, of course, is going to be challenging Becky Lynch for the Intercontinental Championship. Was it Saturday or Sunday? I forgot what night that is, but she'll be challenging Becky this coming Sunday for the Intercontinental title, and she was getting ripped online. I didn't really think it was that bad. Everybody was like, oh, this is a really awful promo, and apparently they just don't like her Becky stompers. She's got these cute little shoes on with fucking high-ass lifts in them, and she goes, I got my Becky Stompers on. I'm like, girl, you look great in those Becky Stompers. And then she's talking about Becky, and then Becky's music hits. Lyra's ready for her in the entranceway, but then Becky comes out from underneath the ring with a kendo stick, but for some reason, Becky then turns her back. Lyra knows she's there, hits the ropes, hits her with like a missile dropkick or something through the ropes, and winds up beating the crap out of Becky, tries to hit her with a Nightwing. Becky escapes and runs away. I didn't see what was so bad about this, but people did not like the Becky Stompers for some reason, and they thought it was cringe and whatnot. Maybe it was, but I really like Lyra. I really despise her name. Lyra Valkyria is stupid, but I do like her as a performer, and I think so far she's been impressing me more than she hasn't. Like I was even saying around WrestleMania time that I felt like she was really holding her own in the ring. Like she's in there with some big time stars, and she's new, fresh in from NXT. You know, I said the same thing about Kevin Owens when he came in. And I'm like, he feels comfortable, you know, and Lyra just didn't seem somebody that was that bad on the mic. She was handling her in-ring promo exchanges well. And in the ring, she's a hell of an athlete. And there's a lot about her that I like. So I guess I didn't hate this as much as social media hated this, but everybody was ragging on her about the Becky Stompers, and I kind of thought the Becky Stompers looked cool. So we'll see what happens there at SummerSlam. I kind of feel like Becky is going to retain because later on, a couple of segments later, Bayley was backstage being interviewed. I think she was being interviewed by the lovely Jackie. So she's being interviewed, and she is like overly dejected. Like almost to an animated level. Just, man, I missed WrestleMania, and now I'm missing SummerSlam, and I'm just, and she just walks away, just so dejected, like her fucking dog died today. And I'm like, what's going on there? So Bayley is going to be involved in that IC title match somehow. I don't know how she's going to do that or what she's going to get into, but I feel like maybe Bayley is going to play a role in Becky retaining, and maybe Bayley and Becky form an alliance. Maybe Bayley is so, because you got to remember, Becky, supposedly anyway, did attack her and knocked her out of WrestleMania. And maybe Bayley is going to be so down on her luck that she's going to have like a if you can't beat them, join them mentality. You know, maybe she's going to help Becky win, and they're going to form the Mega Powers, brother, and they're going to do a handshake, and, you know, Bayley and Becky will maybe kind of recreate what Bayley and Sasha had, and they're a little duo there or something, and then maybe, well, you can't have them on the same brands. I was about to say maybe Bayley could go target the United States Championship, or maybe she feels like aligning herself with Becky would help get her more opportunities, because Becky is certainly great at getting opportunities. She's getting championship matches on every fucking PLE. She got to work WrestleMania. She got to work SummerSlam, and not Bayley. So maybe Bayley feels like, oh, well, I guess I better befriend Becky, because that's the only way I'm going to get fucking opportunities around here. You know, and then maybe that winds up turning into a feud and Bayley wins the title. I think that the end game here probably is going to be Bayley winning the Intercontinental Championship from Becky at some point, or maybe Lyra. I don't think Lyra's going to regain the title at SummerSlam, but the way that they're doing Bayley, doing her wrong, man, I feel that she's got a big moment coming, and it probably will be winning the Intercontinental Championship. And I hope that she does, because Bayley looks sad. She just looks so sad. Boy, I gotta felt like we were watching Dynamite here for a second when we had this big 8-woman tag team match. The only thing missing here was some prize money. I'm surprised it wasn't a $200,000 all-star women's tag match or whatever the fuck that nonsense Tony Khan is doing. So this is going to be Io Sky, Nikki Bella, Stephanie Vaquer, and Rhea Ripley taking on Naomi and Chelsea and her Secret Service. This was a mismatch. The baby faces here were very strong, and they all came out together. Chelsea was the most entertaining here. Chelsea, the absolute opposite of a hear me out. My God, Zach, how'd you do it? How did you do it? Anyway, Chelsea takes a devil's kiss, and she sold it marvelously. My favorite thing about the devil's kiss It's just the way the arms are flailing, when it's happening. It looks so good. So Chelsea just gets annihilated by that. And then Stephanie hits her Stephanie Valkyia bomb, her SVB, which is a very weak finisher. I think the only thing missing with Stephanie's presentation is a good, solid finisher. She needs something. Hits that to Chelsea for the win, and the babyfaces win. And Rhea Ripley and Stephanie had a wonderful little selfie that they posted on social media today. I am really liking that for a WrestleMania match. Now, after this match happened later on, they're backstage again, and Io and Rhea Ripley have a couple of words, and Rhea's like, "Yeah, we were friends tonight, but we got to fight this weekend." And then Io's like, "You never beat me, and you never will." So they're continuing to remind not only us, but also Rhea Ripley that she's never beaten Io Sky. So I just feel like a big moment is coming for Rhea in Perth. This is going to be a really, really fun triple threat match at SummerSlam. I think it could potentially be a show stealer, but Naomi, I think, needs to retain. She's going to retain. Something's going to happen here between Io and Ripley. Naomi, I think, will take advantage of that, capitalize, and retain the title. And then you got Clash in Paris, which as of right now is going to be Stephanie Valkyia and Naomi, unless, Naomi doesn't retain. Maybe Io Sky gets the belt back. But the fact that Naomi cashed in, I don't think that'd be doing her any favors to take the belt off of her this fast. So I feel like Naomi needs to win. Also, she needs to find a way to probably survive Clash in Paris. I am worried about that Stephanie Valkyia match. You got to get out of that without beating her. You got to protect Stephanie, but also I don't think she can win the title there. And then either in Perth, I think Rhea Ripley either wins the championship or she beats Io Sky. So it could be both. Io Sky could win the title back, and then it's Rhea and Io, main event Perth. Rhea Ripley finally beats Io Sky. Or you do a match without the championship. Ripley versus Io in Perth, and Ripley gets the moment. But I think Ripley winning the championship back in Perth would be perfect, and then she can hold it and drop it at WrestleMania. That's what I would do. I've talked about this a couple times over the last couple of weeks. Ripley winning the title in Australia later on in, October, and then she will carry the belt into next year. I would have Stephanie Valkyia win the Royal Rumble or the Elimination Chamber, but Royal Rumble might be better. And then it's Stephanie and Ripley for the title, and Ripley puts her over. And now you got two Ripleys. Two Ripleys, believe it or not. Like what I did there? I did too. So that's kind of way I see that going. And big win for the baby faces. I'm looking forward to that triple threat match a lot more than I'm looking forward to Tiffany and Jade. Tiffany and Jade does not interest me. I don't give a shit about those two, to be honest. But over here on Raw, much better. It's funny how SmackDown's tag division is better than Raw's, but Raw's women's division, I think, is better than SmackDown's. There's things that both shows do better than the other, but this particular women's match I'm looking way more forward to, and I think it's going to easily outperform what Jade and Tiffany do in the ring. Did you guys see the clip, by the way, of the airport of, the MFTs? The big Samoans were walking as like a human shield for Tiffany through the airport, so all those smelly, stinky fucking fans can't get near her. It was basically like Solo was like, you ain't even going to smell their deodorantless bodies. They ain't going to get anywhere near you. Come on, we got you, girl. And I really, really love that because, she's on opposite brands from her husband. So is Naomi. And that's why I think Jimmy will find his way over to Raw at some point pretty soon. Maybe El Grande over to SmackDown or whatnot, or maybe Tiffany over to Raw if she loses the title. If Jade Cargill beats Tiffany for the championship, I think they might move Tiffany to Raw. I do. We'll see how all that goes. We still got to figure out if we're going to have a draft or not. I don't think we need one, but we might get one. Then after that, tag team championships were on the line. The Judgment Day took on the LWO. I think LWO won the number one contenders match next week. Is that what happened? I think it is. El Grande Americano interferes in this. And then a second El Grande Americano interferes. This one was more in like a jumpsuit, a different type of mask, and short as shit. He interfered, allowing Finn Balor to hit the coup de Gracie on one of them, I forget who, for the win, and the Judgment Day retains. which I assumed they would. And when I first saw the second El Grande, I thought it was Rey Mysterio. I'm like, is that Rey? And then I immediately ran to Twitter because I'm like, oh, they'll figure it out. And they're like, it's Pete Dunne. Oh, it's Pete Dunne. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's Pete Dunne. So Pete Dunne looks to be the other El Grande. And the only thing I'm worried about now that we have two El Grandes, I'm worried that, I just bought tickets to Survivor Series. And I'm worried that I'm going to have to watch Bam Bam Bigelow team up with Bastion Booger and the Head Shrinkers to take on 4 El Grandes. And then when they all come out, it's going to be Men on a Mission Grande and Bushwhacker Grandes, and it's going to be a fucking mess. I don't want to see that. So now we're multiplying the Grandes, and if you include Chad Gable, we got 3 of them now. We have Tres El Grandes, which means 3 El Grandes in Spanish. That's a lot of El Grandes. They're multiplying. Like maybe if you get them wet, they're like gremlins and they pop off new El Grandes. Sprinkle a little water on one of them, see what happens. So anyway, they're multiplying, and there may be more, and I have a feeling there's going to be some at Triple Mania as well. We'll have to see what's going on there, but it feels like with the El Grande stuff, they're just throwing everything against the wall and seeing if it works or not. You know, this I liked. I actually really did like the Gunther and CM Punk promo tonight because I loved Punk's confidence. He big-timed him. It was great. Gunther comes out, and he's saying all his things about Punk. I don't care about you. I'll fuck you up or whatever. And then Punk comes out for his retort, and he says that, Punk says he doesn't want to be world champ. He needs to be world champ. And then he says he needs to be world champ like the Detroit Red Wings need their 12th Stanley Cup. You're telling me, CM Punk, and leave it to CM Punk, the only person possible that would be able to be a Blackhawks fan and pop a Red Wings crowd. The crowd popped for that. Because, Detroit and Chicago, obviously they're rivals, but they're also original 6. So I think, with some of those teams, there's a respect there. And Blackhawks and Red Wings both have very, very storied histories, multiple Stanley Cups in both franchises. But I think deep down, there's got to be a level of respect there. God, who was the Blackhawks guy that played for Detroit? Chelios? Or was it, I think it was Chelios. It was Chelios. You know who I see all the time, who comes into my restaurant frequently? Jeremy Roenick. He's awesome. He's so nice, too. I actually see him quite frequently. But anyway, there's some hockey talk there for you. And yeah, Detroit, please bring another cup to Hockey Town because it's been way too fucking long. So Gunther is being read the riot act by CM Punk. And what I loved next is Gunther basically tries to do what Gunther always does, and he tries to interrupt CM Punk, basically just exerting his dominance. And Punk's like, I'm not done. And he's like, basically like, there's levels to this, and you are not on my level. And you're going to find out at SummerSlam why I am who I am, why they've been chanting my name for 10 years. You have no idea what you're getting into with me. And Punk, when you have feuds like this, if I was in the position of the veteran like Punk, these are the things I would say. I'm like, bitch, you can't even step to me yet. I don't care how tough you are, you retired Goldberg, how many chops you throw. Your resume compared to mine, there is no comparison. I've been more places. I've won more championships. I've beaten better men than you. I am not afraid of you. You big dumb goof. And I like that. I kind of like Punk, being that confident, saying, when you're at our level, we fear no one. And it was just kind of like, I guess it was his demeanor. It was his, his confidence, his attitude that I really like to see in promos. We're not backing down. And the fact that he was saying these things and Gunther wasn't getting physical and allowed him to say it, and Punk said his piece and walked away, and Gunther looked pissed that he lost the promo battle. Like, fuck, he got me. Like he spoke better than me. And Gunther is somebody who comes off on the mic very confident. Again, he doesn't sweat anybody either. He doesn't care who he's in there with. He's confident enough to know he can beat anybody, including, all-time legends like Gunther. And so it was a cool clash, and I liked that Punk was able to back him down a little bit and kind of remind Gunther that, yeah, I might be CM Punk, I might be a little bit older, but I am not to be trifled with, and I am not to be underestimated. And if you do, my knee will be in your teeth, and you're going to be looking at the lights. And I like that. I like the message that was delivered there. That was good. Is CM Punk going to win the championship at SummerSlam? We talked about the possibility of a Seth Rollins cash-in. I can't tell what WWE is doing. I'm still 75% certain it's legit and there's going to be no Punk cash-in. But like I said, the way to really capitalize on the swerve is to have Punk win the other title. You know, everybody's so fixated on this one. And yeah, he's got the history with CM Punk. It would make perfect sense for him to cash in on Punk because of everything going on between them all year long. But I feel like if you're going to go through the trouble of faking an injury, working wrestlers, working the internet, you know, and Seth Rollins working his own fucking daughter. There's a video of him on the streets on his crutches walking side by side with his daughter. You're going to work a 4-year-old? Come on. Well, I guess that's all parents do is work 4-year-olds. So you got to work your kids. But I feel like if they're going to go through that type of trouble to fabricate this injury and make it seem like it's legit and really legitimately try to fool everyone, then I think Gunther and Punk needs to happen with no cash-in. And then the fans are like, well, I guess Seth is really hurt. And then he shows up on night 2. Not that no fans are going to have that in the back of their mind too. I'm sure some fans will still think that, oh, Punk or Rollins could show up here. But I think a lot of them are going to assume that the injury might be legit. So I feel like WWE would only go through the trouble of this and trying to fool and work everyone if they had a bigger swerve planned. Because I just don't think I keep saying Punk. I just don't think Rollins cashing in on the World Heavyweight Championship match would require a swerve of this nature. You don't need to do it. Rollins just needs to be... I would have booked Rollins in a match, and that's another reason why I think this is probably legit, because I feel like they would just do it another way. You know, I would have Rollins maybe in a match with LA Knight. LA Knight beats him, and then he comes back later and wins the title. Now you give a good victory to LA Knight, and then you got Seth winning the championship later. You know, I might do it some way like that. By the way, LA Knight not booked for SummerSlam, correct? That sucks. Maybe LA Knight and Bayley can have a match against each other. Sure. So the fact that Rollins has completely disappeared from this, it would only make sense, like I said, is if he comes out and he cashes in and either in the middle of the Cody and Cena match or on the winner. That would be the way I would do it. That would be the ultimate swerve. The headlines, he fooled us all, where I just don't think you would get those same level of headlines if they did it on Saturday. It feels unnecessary to go through the charade to cash in on Saturday. But I think it would be great if they did it on Sunday. See what I mean? Like, it only feels like going through this trouble would be worth it if you did it on Sunday. So that's why I feel like the injury is either legitimate or he's cashing in on Cena and Cody. That's my belief as we stand right now. But you will get my official prediction on Thursday, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, for our SummerSlam predictions. All right, the main event. Jey Uso taking on Bronson Reed. During Jay's promo, I tweeted that the main event has got to be a disqualification because I feel like if either guy wins here, that means their team is going to lose at SummerSlam because fans know wrestling math. You know, they know how to add these things up usually. You know, if you beat somebody down and hold the championship over their body on the go-home show, you ain't winning that championship. So I felt like the same applied here. You needed to do some sort of a DQ, and I feel like this was a finish that you could see coming from Mars. You could be on Earth. The finish could be on Mars. You could see it coming. Like, that's how far away you could see this coming. But they did surprise us at the end with a little bit of extra that I wasn't expecting. So it's Jey Uso, Bronson Reed. Braun Breaker winds up causing the DQ when he spears Jey Uso in the aisleway. Bell immediately rings, and that's when you knew we were going to get Roman Reigns. And a lot of people were pointing out that Roman Reigns wasn't on the stage for the big Hogan 10-bell salute earlier. And I said, that's because he needs to show up at the last minute and make the save. He was there all night, but you can't have him out there if you're going to have him come out later and have it seem like he just got there. And I thought for sure they were going to do the SUV spot. I'm like, yeah, what's going to happen is there's going to be a DQ. Jay's going to be beaten down. They're going to cut to the Tron, and you're going to see an SUV pull up, and the OTC is going to jump out, and he's going to make a beeline for the ring. His music's going to play. That's what they're going to do. So Roman can't be out there if he's just arriving to the arena later on. but they didn't even show the SUV spot. It was just Roman's music hit, and he came out there, and I thought that he was just going to plain make the save for Jay, and they were going to stand tall. And so I started getting excited when he's out there Superman punching bitches, because I'm like, oh, this is a good omen for Team Heyman. I have a feeling maybe Braun Breaker is going to pin Roman Reigns at SummerSlam, because while this is going on, I'm assuming the show is going to close with Roman and Jay standing tall in the ring with the heels retreating. And I'm like, oh, this could be a big moment at SummerSlam for Braun Breaker. And then everything changes. Jay and Roman lay these guys out, and then they both go to the outside of the ring, and Roman and Jay are both going to do like a running spear to Reed and Breaker respectively, but both guys recover and nail the two of them. I think Reed nearly spears Roman in half, and then I think it was Reed who took out Jay. Might have been vice versa. Can't remember. But now it's Breaker and Reed in control, and they absolutely beat the shit out of these guys. Braun Breaker dives off the apron onto Roman Reigns, like clotheslines him over the table. Then you throw him in the ring. Bronson Reed tsunamis Roman Reigns, flattens him out. And I'm like, okay, it's like 39 past the hour here. We're a little bit past when Raw usually goes off the air, and like they're still going. You know, I thought the double spear, or the double spear counter, I should say, on the outside of the ring was going to be the end of it. But then, you know, Roman goes over the table. Then he gets tsunamied. So I'm like, okay, for sure, the tsunami's the end of it, right? No, not yet. Now Roman and Jay are both on the outside of the ring right over there by the timekeeper's table. And it's a big complaint of mine in WWE. If you want to make your shit even somewhat realistic, it is so weird that the barricade can only break away in that one spot. This is something they do hundreds of times. Why does Breaker never have the urge to spear someone on the other side? But I think they even make the toys now with that part of the barricade that breaks away. I can't tell you how much that bothers me. It bothers me so much. You know, you should, I know you can't break that thing and go into the fans and break a fan's leg or anything, but so I understand why it has to be done there, because it's still inside the perimeter of their barricade and they're only going to land on the timekeeper and stuff. So I get it, but it's too silly and formulaic, and it's programming fans to think that these matches are always this way. Is that a right way to say it? I just don't like it. I know it's a little thing to bitch about, but my God, why does it always have to be right there? So Roman and Jay are over by that barricade, the only part of the barricade you can do this on, and in comes Braun Breaker with a double spear to both of them. Breaker hits Roman and Jay. They collide through the barricade. The barricade breaks. They're completely annihilated. And then Bronson Reed comes over and removes the shoes of Roman Reigns and holds them up like trophies. So there you go. Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. There is one early prediction I'll give you for Thursday. Roman Reigns and Jey Uso will defeat Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. They have to after a finish like that. But the way it started going at first, I was convinced that it was going to be Roman and Jay standing tall. And I'm like, great. They're gonna feed a bone to Breaker here. They're going to have him pin Roman Reigns. That might then lead to maybe a one-on-one match or a small program or something like that. Nope, it's going to be the baby faces. And guess what? It's probably going to be Roman pinning Braun Breaker. I bet you it will be. I bet you Roman pins Braun Breaker for the win. That's what I feel like will happen. Perhaps, though, it's Reed that takes the pin, because if Seth Rollins is legitimately injured, Breaker is going to have to step up. So, you know, maybe you protect him there, but based on how everything went, that double spear to those guys, I feel like Roman's going to pin Breaker. Just feel like that's the way it's going to go. You know, and then maybe we get a rematch at WrestleMania between the two and you put Breaker over. I don't know. But right now, I feel like it's a sure win for Jey Uso and Roman Reigns. Here's something that I was trying to figure out a way to fantasy book this the other night. And I told myself, I'm like, remember to bring this up on your next podcast. I can't remember if I talked about it on Saturday or not. But I was thinking about Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, and maybe if Rollins is injured, they add someone new to the group, perhaps. If Braun Breaker moves into that leadership role, you know, maybe they have someone to fill his void. And I don't know who that would be, But if they did do that, that means, Roman and Jay would kind of be at a disadvantage. And that would be a really good way to get Jimmy Uso over to Monday Night Raw and have Usos and Roman back together again, maybe against these guys. But another name I was thinking about that might be fun is the guy that's going to be challenging for the United States Championship on Sunday, the day after this match. And that's Jacob Fatu. I don't know what the point is at this point to have Jacob win back the U.S. title. He could, fine, but do you really need him to? I almost think it better serve Solo to be U.S. champion than Jacob, because Jacob doesn't need that to be over. Maybe Solo does a little bit more. And I'm like, what if on Saturday, Reed and Breakker have some sort of advantage on Jay and Roman? Even Jimmy Uso comes out to try to help, and he's fended off. And maybe they're getting annihilated. Maybe this is a post-match beatdown, kind of like tonight. And it looks like they're about to, end the career of Roman and Jey Uso. They've already laid out Jimmy. He's there. They've got a tandem dual table spot. And the announcers are selling it. If they hit this, Roman and Jay will never wrestle again, or just some brutal spot they're about to execute on both of them. And then out comes Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu to come out and make the save. And you got Jacob Fatu battling with Braun Breaker again. That first face-off we saw gave us all little wrestling boners. That was great. We want more of that, please. Same thing with Bronson Reed out there. And Jacob Fatu is out there to help Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. And he just shows up because there's nobody else. That's my family. I might have had my problems with these guys in the past, but that's my family. I got to save my family. So he runs out there to make the save and maybe helps Roman and Jay win or saves them from total annihilation. And then Braun Breaker shows up on Sunday and costs Jacob Fatu the U.S. title in the cage match. Because if Jacob isn't going to win against Solo, somebody's got to interfere. And we've already seen enough of Tala Tonga and Tama Tonga and Tama Tamba and Haku and King Tonga and, all those guys. So maybe Jacob makes an appearance on Saturday, which is where the tag match is, right? And then on Sunday, you have Breaker doing something to interfere in that U.S. title match to get revenge, or maybe Jacob. Well, no, you'd have to do that on Saturday. I was going to say maybe Jacob turns and joins Heyman's group or something, but that wouldn't work. Not at SummerSlam. You could maybe do it down the line, but not at SummerSlam. Something like that. I was wondering if it would be possible, even though they're on two separate brands, two different situations, and two separate nights of this pay-per-view, if somehow Jacob Fatu and Braun Breaker got involved in each other's matches. Something to think about, that maybe that could happen. And that was it for the end of Monday Night Raw, man. I almost rethought my thumbnail when I saw Bronson Reed holding them sneakers. I'm like, I got to do that, but I kind of wanted to go live, and so I didn't make a new thumbnail. But it was a cool image to see Reed take the shoes of Roman Reigns. Now, what's Roman Reigns doing? Walking through the hotel, socks? Poor guy's got no shoes, man. All right. Homie got sneaker jacked. Is that a thing that happens? People getting sneaker jacked? I'm so glad I don't give a shit about expensive sneakers. I do not care. I don't need Jordans or anything. I would never, ever spend hundreds of dollars on something that goes on my fucking feet. But I guess if you do, you can get jacked. That's why I don't get jacked. All right, let's go back here and answer some questions, see what you guys are saying in the chat. I got a few super chats to hit, and then we will probably call it a night. Elizabeth and I started watching, after we watched Happy Gilmore last night, we put on Apple TV the show Platonic. It's Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne, and they're a couple of friends that reunite later and get into wacky adventures, something like that. Anyway, it's kind of good so far. We've been through like 3 episodes. So I'm going to read these and then get on out of here. Let's see. Chris, did I answer that one already, that 5 from you? I think I did. Yeah, I answered that one. Off Leather Wings, $1.99. Yeah, Gen Z only knows Hogan for racism and killing TNA. That's true. I think about like how many years are going by now. It's 2025. You're 23 years old if you were born in in 2002. So even 23-year-olds, even 25-year-olds do not have any sort of personal memories whatsoever of Hulkamania or the height of Hulkamania or anything he did. You know, you really have to be in your 30s now, like in your 30s, to remember any of this. Because even if you're 30, you know, you're just born at the birth of the NWO, you're 1 year old. So you got to really be like 38 to even like remember any of that, right? So I mean, you're talking like minimum age here to have any idea of Hulk Hogan's like pro wrestling career when he was at his peak. I think the minimum age you got to be is 38. Anything younger than that, you're not gonna understand, and or you're just not gonna have those memories. I should say you might understand, but you're not gonna have like the memories, the same type of memories that we do. And like for me, you know, Hogan's run was so long that, you know, even his WCW days, that could have been some fans' first memories of Hulk when he won the WCW title. But mine was the iconic image of him hooking the Iron Sheik's leg in Madison Square Garden. And I think that perspective is going to be vastly different than somebody becoming a wrestling fan in the late 90s or the early 2000s. And I'm Gen X, so I'm 2 generations below that. And we're the ones that know. We're the ones that really know. Ronnie Matthews, you know, Waterboy was another one that I didn't love. I didn't hate Waterboy, and I never saw Little Nicky or Zohan or whatever, but I didn't need to. The trailer was enough. I'm like, absolutely not. I will not watch that garbage. Or the one where he's the twin sisters or whatever. And Waterboy was different because Waterboy was popular. A lot of people liked it. I watched it in theater, and it was cool to see the giant on it. And it had its moments, but I don't know, the Bobby Boucher, and I don't like when he does those voices. Drives me, it's nails. It's Dean Douglas on the fucking chalkboard for me. So even Waterboy, I don't rank as one of my favorite Adam Sandler movies, but it's not as stupid as some of the ones I really hate. Joe M, I love Don't Mess With His Own. I will not watch it. You know, I'm choosing to hate it without watching it. I will not. It's just too stupid. For the longest time, I refused to watch White Chicks, and then Elizabeth, I lost a bet or something. She made me watch it, but I'm like, I just don't like those movies. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. They're just not funny. They're just too stupid. I think there is such a thing as being too stupid, and those movies are. Off Leather Wings, appreciate the $5. Oh, nice. My girlfriend and I are coming from South Florida to Survivor Series. She also has a work retreat there, and it's our 3-year anniversary. Nice. So you're going to be up in Petco. That is awesome. In the next few months, make sure you hit me up. You can come by. I'm actually going to post. Here's this is where our seats are. So here's Petco here. So here's the ring kind of in the middle there. And I'm going to be over here in 118, like row 11 or some shit. So we felt like that's a pretty good spot. We're not going to be blocked by any sort of set, or big beams holding up the canopy or anything like that. So that's kind of where we're at Survivor Series off Leather Wings. So if you haven't gotten tickets yet, try to get them around that area. We already booked a block of 5 seats there. So yeah, either way, we'll see you. We got a fan meetup planned probably before and after the show. Right on. Fun fact, I knew that Sean Swaby. Adam Sandler was on The Cosby Show as one of Theo's friends. I remember when he was. I remember when my dad used to run a video store, like a video rental store, a local video store on Cape Cod. And I spent a couple of summers up there and loved it because I would go to work with him, and I was fascinated by the tapes. I would organize the tapes. I would put them back on the shelf. I basically do his job for him. And one of the things we would do is he would have me do is like when new videos would come in the mail, I would take them out of the box, and then you put the tape on the shelf, and then you shrink wrap the box art to put in front. For you children out there, might not remember or might not know what this was like back in the video store days, you would have the box art there, and then behind the box is where they would keep however many copies of the tape. Sometimes just one, sometimes 50, depending on what the movie was. And I remember when Overboard, was not Overboard. What was the movie he did? He's like on a boat, and he's got like water wings, and it's a really stupid movie. Not Overboard. It's I forgot. Cabin Boy. Maybe it's Cabin Boy. Maybe it's Cabin Boy. But I'll never forget like that. I never even saw Cabin Boy, but I remember shrink wrapping the box art to Cabin Boy and putting it up on on the shelf there in like one of Sandler's like early movies. And then he was on like SNL when he was super young too. He's talented. He can sing. His concerts were a trip. There's a lot about Sandler that I like. I just think sometimes he takes his comedy to, just a little bit too immature of a level for me. there's always got to be one. Like, you notice this movies, there's always got to be one cross-eyed character in it. One guy's got to have an eye over here, like looking at his own nose. Like every movie, he's got to have like one like that. And I'm like, why is everybody got to be like that in all of his movies? I don't understand. Yeah, I agree. Not the greatest sequel, but we've definitely seen worse. 100%. Yo, happy early birthday to Isaac. Taking a trip with the family for the next few days. We'll be back in time for SummerSlam. Nice. Weather in Jersey says perfect, and apparently it's going to be sunny. I mean, Jersey's a big state. We got to talk about where, what city is it in? MetLife and, forgot what fucking town it's in. Anyway, over there by New York City. It's just right across the river. So just look up New York City is probably better than New Jersey to look up. 83 and 84 degrees Saturday and Sunday, and sunny. That is good news. Not that a T-storm can't fire up in the summertime, but so far so good. That sounds good. I saw a little bit of Nash talking to Sean Oliver. I also saw just a clip of Bischoff on Something to Wrestle, but they were talking so much about faith and stuff. I had to click off of it. And I watched maybe a couple of clips of, or a couple of minutes of, I think it was Briscoe and JBL. And they showed a clip of JBL doing a Hulk Hogan impression after a college football game. Like, we hear you're a big wrestling fan. And he did a big, like, Hogan-style promo. It was fucking great. He had the hair and everything. It was fun. That put a smile on my face. That's just what I want to see. I want to try to remember positives because, you just want to. And that was really good. So tributes are pouring in now a lot of podcasts, a lot of people have had a chance to be on camera, talk about it, especially, all the wrestlers out there with podcasts and all the veterans out there who basically, it seems like there's a million of those podcasts where it's one old wrestler and then just some dude, like a 28-year-old dude that like moderates it. And I don't know, there's like a million of those. So they've all had the chance to speak on Hogan, and there's been a lot of memories shared, and it's been a crazy few days. Wrestling lost its biggest star. When obviously we're not going to celebrate or do anything shitty when Ric Flair passes away. I'm not going to do that. But his will be a lot easier to cope with. Hogan, I think with me, it was just a lot of reminders of how he disappointed me, but also a lot of reminders of how much I loved him, as a kid, and, trying to have forgiveness and trying to measure up what he did compared to others and all these different things that we do. But when it comes to Flair, we're never going to celebrate a death or anything like that. But I'm not going to struggle with my emotions as much as I did with Hogan, because Flair is so dirty. He's just so dirty, And he's another one that I'm just super disappointed in. But again, hell of a career. Not a game-changing career the way Hogan's was. Flair didn't single-handedly save a company per se. Maybe a little, but he really kept the NWA afloat. That's for sure. And I know the transition into WCW, he was factored into that as well. But still, his impact is not as great as Hulk Hogan's. In terms of, what Hogan did, even when he came into Flair's own company. Flair was already there in WCW, a fledgling WCW. In comes Hogan, and the game changes overnight. Flair came into Hogan's world a couple years earlier, didn't change shit. Wrestling actually declined when Flair got there. So Flair comes to the WWF, business sees a drop. Hogan goes to WCW, business sees an increase. They're not the same. Hogan had a bigger career. And Flair, to his credit, himself admits that. You'd think that Hogan and Flair would have a lot, like a personal rivalry or secret hatred for each other, the way Triple H and The Rock does, but they don't. Flair submits. He concedes. Hogan is the greatest of all time. He said it multiple times in interviews. He doesn't try to plead his case for him to be the greatest. He actually bows down to the Hulkster. So there's one good thing I can say about Flair. He's not so far up his own ass that he's bullshitting himself, but man, he's dirty. He's so dirty. You see the interview? Here's a clip of an interview of him on Ariel Helwani's show today. I don't think Ric Flair understands how cameras work. This is what it was. He did the whole interview like this, and he had his glasses on. Just face right up to the to the, oh wow, look at my camera. Face right up to the camera, like up in his face. And you only see one eye, half of his face, and his one half of his sunglasses covered over half of the screen. I'm like, does he understand? Does he know what camera, like right here, the little light, you just look in it. You're a wrestler, for fuck's sake. How do you not know where the red light is? Anyway, hilarious. Mr. Capital letters in his tweets and stuff. My God. Anyway, we're going to be doing that podcast one day too, and we will be respectful. I will not shit on Flair, but like I said, like I was with Hogan, when it comes to people like that, we will be honest. If we're going to talk about all the good, we're going to talk about the bad as well, because that's only fair. It's not fair to bullshit yourself. This country we live in is burning books and trying to whitewash our own history because they don't want our ugliness taught to kids. You have to be taught and it drilled into your head to love your country no matter how shitty they are. I do not live my life that way. And I will not bullshit myself ever. So when it comes to Flair, we're going to talk about his championships, his classic matches, his amazing promos, his hilarious promos, his wild promos, and every single great contribution he ever made to pro wrestling. And we're going to talk about every bad one he made too, just like we did with Hulk Hogan. So, yeah. All right, that's kind of a wrap on Hogan. I don't know, like this week coming up, we got SummerSlam predictions. It's, can't grieve forever type of thing, but, the last 4 days really feels like it's been centered around him. Last night on the watch along, we tried to take a break. I purposely, kept stuck with a show that didn't have a Hogan match on it because I thought it would be just a nice breather. We could focus on something else, and the watch along was really fun. But we knew there would be more Hogan chatter tonight, and now I feel like we can kind of put it behind us and start moving forward. And I don't think you're going to have another a live stream or a podcast for me where we're going to be spending 30 minutes to an hour talking about Hulk Hogan like we have been doing in the past few days. So, thank you to everyone that kind of watched in real time me process this, because it was weird. It was really weird. And I thank you guys for just kind of being here with me and going through all the different type of memories and whatnot and thinking about, all the different like emotions and stuff. And we've lost a huge childhood hero. You know who else passed away today? Ryan Sandberg, famous second baseman from the Chicago Cubs. I still have his baseball cards, and again, I think about opening up a pack and seeing a Ryan Sandberg card, and I liked him. Don't know what he passed away of, but, he passed away today as well. So names from your childhood that leave you are tough. Randy Savage was, man, that took me a while. That was up there with kind of like Owen. Owen was more like shocking and tragic, and it haunts me to this day, that I watched that all happen with my own eyes and stuff, but Savage was just like, oh, I think that was the first, like, major childhood hero that I had lost. Because I loved Owen, but he wasn't a childhood hero, I grew to love Owen in my 20s, but Savage was, a whole different story. He was a lot like Hogan in that respect, because Savage and Hogan both kind of came before Brett. I liked them before I liked him, and so Brett has always been my number one. Savage was always my number two. So Savage dying was really sad, because I thought we were so close to getting him back, in WWE. So these type of deaths, are tough, especially when it's, a personality or a figure or an entity, athlete, whatever it is. Think about what the basketball world went through with Kobe Bryant. It's a really good example, actually, because I don't believe that Kobe raped that girl, but I do believe that he cheated on his wife. He admitted that. He had an affair. He was a shitty person, and he had some other kind of weird things in his early career as well. But man, when he died, didn't feel like any of that mattered. The entire world mourned that loss, Is Kobe as bad as Hogan? That's for y'all to decide. I don't know. But, you think about the forgiveness that a lot of fans had for Kobe, and maybe some other athletes that passed away that kind of had Pete Rose is a good example. You think about other instances like that where people were able to forgive, So I think maybe think about some of those situations. Think about other sports. Think about other people that passed away. Obviously, O.J. Simpson can rot in hell because he absolutely killed two people. He killed his wife and her boyfriend. 1,000,000,000% he did it. So people like that, fuck them. But other people, like the Kobes, or somebody else that maybe just made a poor decision, made a mistake. If anybody beats a woman, hurts a kid, anything like that, fuck them. They're unforgivable. But I'm talking about just things that you say, maybe actions that you do that are regrettable, but also forgivable. And everybody's going to have their own line in the sand there. What's forgivable for you, Doug, Juliet, Jay Lambo? Where do you draw the line in saying, I can't forgive anything above this? I think Hogan is below that line. He's near it. He's got a toe on it. But I think ultimately he's below the line to where I think most people who have empathy, sympathy, and forgiveness in their heart can forgive him. Especially people of faith. That's what Christianity is all about, right? I'm not a faithful person. I'm agnostic. I'm atheist. I was like, but those of you who are, you're taught, you're preached forgiveness. So forgive. It's my advice. But yeah, I thought about that last night a little bit. I was thinking about all the different athletes and people in general, actors, celebrities in general who pass away after having a wild life. What's Charlie Sheen's funeral going to be like? People are going to say a lot of great things. Hot Shots Part 2 was a great movie. So think about the good and also think about what a dirty creep he was at the same time. So, I mean, there's Hogan is one of many examples throughout sports and entertainment that have this type of complicated legacy. He's not OJ, but he might be a Kobe. And, that's the way it is. So anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for hanging out over the past few days. It's been crazy. And I'm glad that it's kind of wrapping up. I know, right? OJ wrote a book called If I Did It. Yeah, there you go. There's another good name. Bill Cosby. Yeah. Again, I don't want to dance on someone's grave, but, Cosby, when that day happens, I'm not going to be like shedding tears, because he's a piece of shit. He's a piece of shit. Malcolm Jamal Warner, on the other hand, was an absolute fucking angel. And I hated to read that story because it's very, like, wrestling fans, that should really resonate with us. All I had to do was read how he died. First thing in my head, Shad Gaspard. First thing. That's so horrifying, And he was such a cool dude, I looked up to Theo as a kid. He was lovably stupid, but when he got older on the show, he really matured and you could see what a smart, kid he was. I remember they did the dyslexia episode, and how he had this learning disability and he was so determined to fix it and do better, and I just looked up to all that. It was a great show, So if anything, we'll remember Malcolm Jamal Warner. When it comes to that family, everybody else in that family and all the actors, for the most part, lived pretty good lives and didn't embarrass themselves or do anything shitty, and Bill Cosby did, but Malcolm Jamal Warner, that just sucks. And he was, overall, never heard a bad thing about him. He never got any trouble, did he? He never did anything wrong. He's a good dude, family man. Zilla Fatu, we could see him. He could debut at SummerSlam because we did see him show. Where did we see him recently? Showed up at the TNA pre-show, right? So, yeah, maybe. But, man, now you're just adding them Samoans are like El Grandes, man. Multiplying like gremlins. Well, obviously, Benoit. Yeah, when you're talking about murder or assault to women or children, forget it. That's probably my line too. But I'm saying like everybody's going to have their own like criteria for this. So those who are dancing on the grave of Hogan, think to yourself, other people in sports or entertainment that you admire, whose posters might be on your wall, who have done worse than Hogan. There's got to be somebody. People are pieces of shit, man. You know how dirty Hollywood is, and we've had, the Aaron Hernandezes, we've had murderers and rapists in the NFL, and, we've had just all sorts of just horrible people everywhere. There's got to be someone, that you have forgiven that maybe on paper did some things worse than Hogan. There's got to be. So the people who are dancing on the grave, posting celebratory memes, just give it some thought. Give it some thought to everybody that you like and admire, whether they're a celebrity, an athlete, anything like that. You're bound to come across someone that you really like or follow on social media and whose tweets you like, who's maybe said some worse things. I bet a lot of them have those people, you know? Yeah. That's going to be a wrap, guys, on Hulk Hogan. Thank you for hanging out. You guys were my therapists for this. You really were. It was, I don't know if I just sat here on my couch and just thought about it for 4 days and didn't have a chance to say things and you know, kind of get it out. You know, you guys were my outlet for that. You know, I was literally laying on your couch, you know, in your office, you know, while I just talked and you listened. So thanks for helping me work through all this. Appreciate it. Appreciate it a lot. Next time you're going to see me, of course, Thursday, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. We're going to be here to predict night 1 and night 2 of SummerSlam. So I got to do some thinking on that and make sure I have all my ducks in a row because there's so many possibilities and run-ins and cash-ins and what they can do. I don't want to have a worse performance than I did at All In, which I think is my worst pay-per-view prediction performance ever. So I'm vowing to do better. So I'm going to give it some thought this time, and we'll have a good time here on Thursday. You guys have a good rest of your night. Thank you so much for joining us. Do me a favor, smash Mr. Thumbs Up button on your way out the door, and I will be catching you guys Thursday as we kick off our road to SummerSlam. Have a good night. Peace.